In this episode, we talk to our good friend and partner in safety, Drew Hinton from Aero Safety. This is an interesting topic. We got into it over on the community site, and I thought, maybe this is going to be a good episode for the podcast as well. And so we're making it available to everybody in podcast land. And the topic is how media coverage can help and also hurt our workplace safety improvement efforts. I thought it was interesting. I hope you find it interesting as well. So let's just go right ahead and jump right into this video that we did for the Safety Pro Podcast community site right now. Before we get into today's topic, I have one question for you. Are you still painting your floors for 5S markings? Things like that? Don't do that. Head over to mightylinetape.com/podcast. A great partner in safety. They've been with us from the beginning. They have some really good products that are going to get you out of a whole lot of time, material, and maintenance and upkeep. Their floor marking tape is second to none. It takes up easily, doesn't leave a sticky residue. They've got floor tape with beveled edges for forklift traffic, carts, things like that. So it really holds up well to that kind of traffic in your facility. They also can do custom floor signs. If you have a particular logo or a message, they can make that happen. Get a free sample and try it for yourself. Again, head over to mightylinetape.com/podcast. Tell them that we sent you. You will get a free sample to try out in your facility today. Again, mightylinetape.com/podcast. All right, we're here with Drew Hinton from Aero Safety. Drew, good morning. How you doing?
Doing good. How are you doing, Blaine?
Hanging in there. We're both at the home office at the same time, which is weird, right?
That's right.
You're always running around, doing all kinds of stuff with your clients. And, if listeners hadn't, or if you're watching this on the community site, you didn't get the previous recording that we did or announcement that we did, and that is Aero Safety is now an official partner in safety with the Safety Pro podcast. So we're excited to have Aero Safety on board. And let's talk a little bit about what Aero Safety does for those who may not already know. I don't know who doesn't already know you with your activity on LinkedIn and
hiding under
your
a
little
rock
videos.
Somewhere.
I love your your little videos you do are funny. Go ahead and just give us a rundown on what all Aero Safety does.
Yeah, so we're a nationwide company. We're based out of Kentucky, but we've traveled all across the country. We've got customers from New Hampshire to the Mojave Desert in California, Texas to Washington State, everywhere in between. But we're obviously a safety consulting and training firm. Probably 80 to 85% of our business is training related, and just about every topic you can think of when it comes to occupational health and safety. So anything from the basic CPR, fall protection, all the way up to hazmat, confined space rescue, all the more technical and in-depth stuff as well. But we also do, kind of part-time staffing. So we've got several customers that are smaller customers that maybe 30 to 50 employees. They're not really big enough to hire a full-time safety professional. So we'll do X amount of hours a month for them. We've come in and did, mock OSHA and mock DOT audits for companies. We've got one of our DOT specialists down in Dallas. He's a retired state trooper, 20 years of commercial vehicle enforcement. So he's like the DOT enforcement guru when it comes to that stuff. So, and then of course, all the kind of one-off stuff, writing policies, procedures, develop safety manuals. We kind of covered a lot of it. And if we can't find it, we always try to find somebody that can do it.
And you customize this stuff to fit the company's specific needs, their industry, their processes. It isn't, you don't do canned manuals and sell those. You work with your clients to develop it for them, right?
Right. Yeah. No cookie cutter stuff. We always work with the client and customer. And, if we're getting ready to do a training in a few weeks, we're going to say, hey, send us your policies. We'll try to get, if we can visit the site ourselves, or at least have them send some pictures of, their equipment and their processes. That way we can incorporate it into the training. And we're not talking about something that happened over in California in a completely different industry. We're doing something that's relevant to you, and and making sure that you're up to date on your site specific information.
The Mojave Desert, though, I'm stuck on that one. You need to turn that into
It was hot. middle of
There's
July.
some ad copy, man. You could turn that into a little ad or something like we'll go through the desert for you or something like
That's
that.
right.
Um,
That's right.
that's great. All right. Well, welcome aboard. Hey, we're going to talk about something it's a weird topic, but we've talked about this off and on in the community site. We've all personally with each other mentioned this, and that is media coverage of whether it's a natural disaster, whether it's more recently train derailments, and like, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Both. We're going to talk about it in terms of its impact on improving safety and health within these organizations or within these certain industries, and how that media coverage can either hurt or harm our efforts. So let's unpack this a little bit. Oh, I hate that phrase. I can't believe I said that.
Too late.
I'm going to edit that out. Let's talk about it a little bit and get into it. What is your take? Is we both you were a firefighter in Louisville. We both and I had fire background, and I remember being on a scene and watching the public information officer talk to the news crew. They had the microphone in his face, and the reporter was asking him questions. I was standing right next to him. I heard exactly what he said, and then they showed the 5 seconds of that, and then went on to describe the scene that was not what happened at the scene. Completely
Right.
got it wrong. And they had all the information of what happened. They got it was a single car accident in this one example. They said that it was multiple vehicles were involved, and I'm like, he said, and you have video of one car flipped over. Like, I don't
Right.
understand how they can get it wrong. What is your
Right.
experience with that?
Yeah, actually, I ran into a similar situation. We had it was a 3-car wreck in Louisville, and as a major intersection in our district. And this was like 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon. So like people were getting off of work. So traffic was pretty heavy. And we were working this incident. And the department I was on at the time was a combination department. So we had volunteers and full-time staff. And we had one of the volunteers with us. And I looked up and I started seeing like 6, 7 people on the sidewalks just videoing. And so I knew this volunteer was new-ish to the department. And so I said, just watch what you're doing because you're being videoed. It's going to go on Facebook. I said, it's going to be critiqued. I said, just watch everything that you're doing right now. But absolutely, like you just said, they're going to take whatever spin they can take on that. Some of it's going to be good information that they're going to take from it. And,
Yeah.
if it's whether it's a house fire from the fire department or if it's an industrial accident or train derailment, whatever it is, they're going to take whatever spin they can have on that, which some of it can be good, right? So, take the train derailments. Hey, there's a hazardous materials leak out of this train, but they're going to set up. The fire department and local officials are setting up a 1 mile shelter in place, right? So that can be good information that you're going to need to know. But also, as we've all seen, take the Ohio train derailment, right? So they're going to, uninformed individuals are going to take that vinyl chloride and talk about the chemicals these news reporters are talking about chemicals, and they're probably searching up and just finding whatever information they can find on the internet and then putting it on there. And you start getting conflicting stories, and it's like we've talked about several times. It's all about doing your research. It can make you be overprotective, and it can make you, it's where confirmation bias kicks in, right? If it's what I think if it aligns with my thoughts, I'm going to assume that it's true, and I'm going to go with it.
Right.
Yeah.
And we were talking offline. I mean, on some level, it's not a bad thing to over-index on the side, to err on the
Right.
side of caution and be over
Yep.
safe. So, but there's a difference between like generating this kind of exposure or coverage that results in regulatory action, public pressure for either laws, government agencies to invest in something, or forcing companies to do something simply because of that overreaction. And they end up taking money, time, resources into fixing something that wasn't as reported. I'm not saying these things don't need to be looked at or don't need to be adjusted or fixed. We all work in these companies. We
Yeah.
all know there's a public persona that's created, and then you get there and you're like, I expected this to be a lot worse. And you're like,
Right.
okay, this is like, we can manage this. There's almost two separate worlds. So let's talk a little bit about um the bias that it creates. And my son came home and told it said, hey, that drilling in Alaska thing got approved. And I'm like, yeah. And well, that's on a national preserve, and it's going to create all this CO. And I'm like, who told you this? What did you learn? We talked about it in school. Did you talk about the offset it's going to create by not importing the equivalent amount of energy? I'm just saying it's going to happen. So let's talk about it, right? I'm not saying I'm
Yeah.
pro or anti drilling. I'm just saying be objective. There was
Right.
no objectivity to anything that he was taught. Nothing. It was all
Right.
bad. It was all bad. I'm like, do you know that the area in question, it's like the size of a postage stamp on a football field? Obviously, somebody's going to fact check that. It's not to scale, okay? But it's pretty small. It's permafrost and tundra for most of the year. It's uninhabitable. There's no food source there. It's
Right.
like, I mean, and then if you try to do research, I tried to look up facts, like actual facts about how big it's going to be, how long it's going to take, how much land is it going to take up. I wanted to look up facts about that area, the geography of the area. Every website, it was all gloom and doom, terrible.
Right.
And it's like, I can't even get past all that. And to get to, okay, we're drilling in Alaska. Okay, we drill in Texas. We drill in Arkansas. People live there. This is in the middle of nowhere. Nobody's there. And I'm not saying that means we pollute the place. We're not going to pollute the place.
Right.
I think we have the best standards and probably should be improved than almost anybody in the world when it comes to this stuff. But I also know this same activity takes place elsewhere where people are living. And like, so how is it that this is different? And so you couldn't find any of that. Do you see that being a problem when it comes to, objective facts, not subjective opinions, in making a decision about something?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's there's a lot of different topics it can go to, even back to like we were talking about, even back to COVID, right? So we were looking at, you walk past somebody, you're going to get COVID, you're going to die, right? And then we started going with that. People were, there's pros and cons and good things and bad things to everything that happened with COVID as far as our protective measures. COVID wasn't a good thing by any means, but as far as what we did, as far as protective measures, but some people were saying that if you were in the same 100 square foot room, but you're in and out of it for 2 seconds, that we're going to quarantine you because you looked at this person the wrong way.
Yeah.
But you start doing that, digging into it, and like you said, going from subjective to objective, looking at both sides of that, right? So what are the facts? Where are your sources coming from? Is it is it mainstream media, which can have, like we just talked about, can have both positive and negative impacts? Is it social media, or are you looking at factual data from a reliable source? So one thing that was hammered into from me, from doing my PhD program and any kind of research that I've done, is what source, if you're going to rely on that stuff on the internet, what source is it? Is it a .com commercial website, or is it a .gov or .edu or .org, like an actual organization, to where it's going to have more likely to have reliable information from that? And you just have to be open to that, because like I said, with the confirmation bias, if you find that first story and it aligns with what you're thinking, then you're going to assume that, okay, I've already found something that's going along with my thoughts, so we're not even going to look at the other side of things. And so we take that in the workplace. that start getting into our differences between some more or less opinions between even safety professionals and the frontline workers. Frontline workers are maybe going to hear some of those, that subjective data, and they're going to go with that. And maybe the safety professionals, hopefully the safety professionals are the ones that's saying, no, let's take a step back and let's look at how this actually works. And maybe that eases some of that tension within the frontline workers.
Yeah, it's very strange. I mean, we're going to bring it back to the workplace, but it's like, I just, it's trying to find objective information anymore to form your own opinion, to actually do research.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing. People are, they live in this, it's like it's binary, and it's not. It's degrees of, right? And you have to weigh everything out. The cost benefit, risk benefit. There's going to be a footprint. And going back to the drilling in Alaska example, like nobody talked about the social impact of not relying on foreign oil from countries that have poor human rights records. Like, you remember the golf tournament? Remember the PGA, the golf tournament that was, everyone was like, that got more people motivated to talk about human rights violations of another country that tried to compete with the PGA than anything else I've seen in my adult life. And yet, but if you say we can add another drilling rig to the ones we already have, and it can reduce our dependence on that same country's oil, nobody talks about it. It's like, oh, you can't do that. You can't do that. It's environmental. It's like, but the environment as a whole, the world, the earth is already doing it. We can offset it, but like you said, we can't get there. We can't get to objectivity. And maybe we shouldn't do it there. Maybe there's a more appropriate place to do it, that we can implement more controls. I don't know, but you can't even cut through the noise to get to that point, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and cutting through the noise is the big issue, because by the time you have already cut through that noise, and essentially people already have their own opinions, and they're hardened to that opinion, right? So now you're fighting an uphill battle to try to disprove everything they've been believing over the last X amount of days, weeks, whatever.
So let's talk about the coverage. Let's bring it back to the workplace. More recently, and I'm not saying it's deserved or undeserved, it just is. So we'll talk about both sides of it. Okay, I'm not levying an opinion either way on this, but this is an example. OSHA has gotten a lot more aggressive in recent years with their press releases. There was a time where they would just make a press release. It was somewhat vague, but they really wanted, the whole point of the press release was to communicate and educate the readers about a particular situation or hazard. Now it's like, this company, it's Dollar General is the one, and we all know they're having issues with OSHA. And we've all seen photos of Dollar General, but remember, that can be a snapshot in time that doesn't necessarily, and I'm not speaking for Dollar General, I don't know, it could be completely what we think it is, I don't know.
Right.
But I do know that you could take a snapshot in time and misrepresent that as the constant state of a business.
Right.
Is that fair to say?
Yep.
Okay. So there's a danger there of doing that. Do you think it's a good idea for OSHA to publicly shame a company in that way versus working with them to improve? Because this is what we want at the end of the day, is to just improve the conditions. It seemed a little weird that they started going down that path of naming the company, and then the language in the press release was really harsh. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, they're even naming individuals by name on fatalities now. So, previously is in like 3 or 4 years ago, if even that long, you go look at the fatality reports and it would just say a 33-year-old worker died from getting crushed by a forklift. Now it says John Doe, a 33-year-old male, got crushed by a forklift, and gives them the name and everything. And so their tactics, I'm guessing, is to make it more personable and to give more details as a scare tactic to say, hey, you know, Dollar General, whatever company is, company XYZ
Yeah.
is out here doing this particular task, and that's going to give them bad publicity. And that's kind of a scare tactic to say, oh, I don't want us to be in the news. I know OSHA's going to throw us in the news, but on the opposite side of things, what is it doing to the companies? Now it's making us fear OSHA, right? So there's things. I mean, I'll be the first one to say there's things OSHA does and standards that I agree with, and there's things that I don't
Yeah.
agree with, and
Right.
and so this is now, to the opposite side of things. It's maybe potentially instilling fear in companies to say, well, OSHA is the bad guy, rather than seeing them as a resource and saying,
Right.
okay, there's a consultative side to OSHA. Now all they're going to see is the enforcement side that's now plastering your company across the media, which may or may not be due and reasonable. But like I said, it's instilling that fear in OSHA rather than seeing them as a potential resource for your company to help improve things.
Yeah, and on the public sentiment side, I mean, it's gonna just be another thing that goes out there publicly that half half the people are going to automatically assume this, and the other half are automatically going to assume that, and that's where we're at.
Yep.
Instead of actually taking a more nuanced look at what's the benefit of this public this press release, what's the purpose and intent. It used to be to inform other businesses of this type of situation so that they may be able to avoid it or fix it or look for it in their business, right? Now
Right.
it's more about, we're going to hurt this company,
Yeah.
we're gonna hit them where it hurts, and we're gonna turn the public against them. And it's like
Right.
weird to me that a government agency would, on paper, just the way things read, go, man, they really don't like this company. Why? I mean, I'm wondering if there. I'm not a lawyer. You're not a lawyer,
Right.
but I'm wondering
I
if there's
wouldn't
any
be.
legal recourse against the federal government for this. But it's interesting that that's the end result, is now you have readers, people, consumers, maybe former employees, current employees, potential employees, now making a judgment to say, I'm going to quit, or I'm going to say something internally about this, or I'm not going to apply. I was thinking about joining that company, and I'm not going to apply it. All of which does the opposite of what we're after, which is
Right.
improving these working conditions. I mean, the business exists for a reason, right? It's a
Right.
business, and
Yeah.
so we need this job. We need these jobs. We need these goods and services in our economy, in our free market economy. So you catch more flies with honey, or bees with honey, I should say, type of approach. What about what about, like, going back to, like, over indexing or scaring people? Like, have you seen in a company where it's caused companies to shift funding, resources, time, energy, effort to work that problem publicly, when we should be doing these other things, and this thing that got out into the public isn't really a problem? It's not as big a problem as they're reporting, and so that ends up taking the company, then shifts that focus.
Doing damage control. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what appears to be damage control. I mean,
Right.
the way we as safety professionals look at things and versus the average non-safety professional, right? So we look at those stories of OSHA publications about something, and a good knowledgeable safety professionals, should know that you can have a fatality, and it could be millions of dollars in fines and penalties, or it could be $10,000, right?
Yeah.
A good, knowledgeable, and understanding safety professional should be able to look at that, and if they post that, company ABC had a employee killed from company ABC in a forklift accident or whatever accident it was, and they look at that and see that the penalties were only $10,000, that should be automatically triggering for a safety professional is that, hey, there's probably not a lot they did that violated it, because even though there's a
Right.
violation, even though there's a fatality, $10,000 in the grand scheme of things isn't a whole lot when OSHA can lay down a lot more than that. So that should be triggering for us. Hey, they probably didn't violate a lot of standards, even though they had a fatality. But all the public sees is they had a fatality. They don't know $10,000. That's a lot of money. No, not really in the grand scheme of things. But like you said, it's they're adapting to those people that are unknowledgeable of those the public statements that are putting out. They're trying to do that damage control, and so it like you said, it takes money to try to cover up all this bad publicity that could be going somewhere else. We can't just companies aren't just going to say, no, if you're not true, we're not going to worry about that, because what's the public going to say? They're going to say, well, they don't care about it. They're not going to worry about it. Then I'm going to stop shopping there, stop doing business with them. But back to your point about the oil drilling, right? So okay, maybe this person they had these violations of Dollar General blocking exits, whatever it is, some seemingly minor stuff to some people, but where what else do they do? What else is that company doing? Are they helping out with all these other civil rights things? Are they doing all this stuff in the environment? What else are they doing? We're just focusing on this because now OSHA put a big public statement out about company ABC has done X, Y, and Z wrong. We penalized them this much. They've been fined this much in the last X amount of years. And, getting back to they can go back 5 years, obviously, on your repeat violations.
Right.
The last company I worked at, we had 30-something different facilities across the U.S., but we're all under one big umbrella company. So we could get with a repeat from 2 of those different facilities. That doesn't necessarily mean it represents the entire other 30-plus operating companies across the country, but it's going to give them a bad image because now you're getting hit with a repeat violation. Your penalty amounts are going to go up, and it's just bad all around.
Yeah, and a good example of the unintended consequence of this type of coverage and then mixing with public perception and then getting into the workplace was a case in Pennsylvania against a company during about COVID protocols. And OSHA, they filed the workers basically were saying, you're not doing enough. And it was based on media reports and talking heads, politicians, and like everybody like COVID, and which is a real, it still is a real thing, right?
Yeah.
But because of the hyperbole around the issue, the workers carry that into the workplace and we're like, well, I saw this news story, I read this thing on a website, and you need to be doing XYZ, and the employer didn't do XYZ. They did ABC. Okay, it's not they weren't doing anything, they just weren't doing the things the workers thought they should be doing. OSHA had come in, done their inspections, and determined they had not violated any OSHA standards, temporary or otherwise, ruled on it, issued no citations. The workers formed a group and tried to sue in court civilly, sue the company for violation of OSHA standards, and it was thrown out. And the reason why I bring this up is because the reason the judge threw it out is because they said, well, your claim is that they were violating safety standards. The arbiter of safety standards came in and said there are no findings, and issued no findings and shut the door on the entire case. So the reason why that case is important is, and I'll get our friend, the lawyer, the safety lawyer, on to talk about this maybe on another episode, but is that this is an example of what we're talking about, the mix of reality, in this case, the law, the rules, the regulations, and meeting minimum standards, which we all can agree, meeting the minimums, the worst companies can meet the minimum standards. So I always like to go above and beyond, but let's just start there because that's the letter of the law. The public perception versus the law, there was a huge imbalance there, and it bit them. The judge was like, no, it's out. The ETS. Oh, that was big. There was a big PR push with politicians and public perception. They thought they would be able to get this done. When you look at the law, and we had the decision that was made, a lot of us were like, I have my personal views and opinions, but just knowing what I know about OSHA and how we make standards and everything, like, there's no way this is going to fly.
Yeah.
So that's why this is an important topic, I think, for safety professionals to pay attention to is, yeah, you could drum up a narrative about a company that is completely out of sync or out of balance with what's actually going on inside that organization, and it can make it hard for those workers, hard for that company to focus. That's tough. What do you
Yeah.
any final thoughts or before we wrap this up on this whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, it makes me think of that whole case you were just talking about with OSHA coming in and saying nope, there's no violations, and then the employee group was saying yeah, there is. It made me think of a company I worked at. I won't mention the name, but we went and did internal audits and had people from different like we would go to different facilities across the country, and we'd have a group of people from all the facilities come up and do a giant audit at each facility. So we'd have 10 people from 10 different facilities auditing one at a time. And so we would come in and say, okay, here's where you're violating it. And then the manager of that site, the corporate manager would always be like, no, I want you to prove to me that that's the way it is. I'm like, okay, we got 10 people saying that it's, we're in our internal essence, we're the law, right? We're saying we got 10 people saying we're violating OSHA standards, but you've got one person saying, no, you're not. So it's kind of the same. It just reminded me of that with, like I said, the employee group. So, I mean, it was just,
And you're bringing up so many things. I've seen posts on LinkedIn about this. If you have to start your sentence with OSHA says, then you're in the wrong culture. You're in the wrong company. And I'm like, well, no, time out. That might not be true. It depends on who you're talking to.
right.
If you tell a manager or supervisor, oh, hey, this condition needs to be changed, it's perfectly normal for them to go, wait, this is the way we always keep it. Like, why do I have to, did a policy change, or is there a rule? Like, that's somebody who just wants to know. Now, they may say it the wrong way. They maybe go, show me where I got to do that. And that's fine. But that's still, at the end of the day, that's somebody who probably just doesn't know that there is a standard by which we have to follow for that condition or employee. I've never been turned off by somebody who says, where's the thing? It's like, okay, this is where we're getting it from.
Yeah.
I think that's an opportunity for both to learn. So
Yeah.
I've never shied away from that.
Yeah, and that's why there's all these standard interpretations out there, right?
Yeah.
So OSHA's not black and white on every single topic. There's plenty of gray areas in there, and that's why there's those standard interpretations for people to ask and say, can you clarify this term, or can you clarify what you meant here? And other people benefit from that information. There's several training topics that we cover, and then say, okay, here's what OSHA is mentioning in their standard. Here's a letter of interpretation to better explain what they're meaning in that aspect of it.
I also saw another bad take on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's good for this, and I could do episodes where it's just, look at this dumb post. But I won't. But somebody should. It was with the train derailment in Palestine, Ohio, and the comment was Norfolk Southern. And I have no affiliation with, I don't know anybody that works there. Maybe I do. Maybe I'm connected with somebody on LinkedIn, but I don't personally know anybody.
Right.
It was they cut their safety training budget, and like clockwork, they had a disaster.
Yeah, like that was
wait a minute. They were bad wheel bearings that were loose. From the manufacturer, they I don't know if this is the final, but I know this is where they were headed, that overheated and caused the derailment. So tell me how their safety program and training budget would have prevented bad bearings from a supplier from being installed. Maybe it's a maintenance, but now maybe there's some argument to be made that they cut their maintenance budget. They reduce the number of maintenance inspections or PMs, or Maybe they didn't have a quality check or test for those bears. Like, there are legitimate questions you can ask, but for somebody who doesn't even know, even myself, by the way, commenting on it now, who doesn't really know, we've been on the inside of those terrible things. Like, I have 5 fatalities throughout my career that I've been a part of investigating. If you're on the outside, shut up. I mean,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yep.
And I know the irony is we're talking about all these things, but like, I that was a bad take, and that does not help at all drive that narrative of, oh, now this company is unsafe. They could, I don't know, they might be, but like, I'm going to take this dude's word for it, who doesn't work there, who knows nothing about it, and just trying to put 2 and 2 unrelated things together to come up with, aha, I gotcha.
Right. Yeah, they're trying to find that, because the one I sent you the other day, it was if you start doing the digging on it, it was a rock. It was a rock. There was a rock slide. It tore out. It knocked out the tracks, and they're like, another train derails. I'm like, what are you gonna do?
Right. It was the track. That's what I said. It looks like it had completely eroded underneath it. Yeah, and that's the thing, is now we're going to lump. First of all, any train that derails is terrible. It's bad.
Right.
Like, one is bad. We can all agree. But the question I wanted to address when we were talking was, are they happening? Because there's 2 things. Like, why are these happening all of a sudden? Well, they're not. We're aware of them more because of,
we had like 1,000 last year, I think.
So that's recency bias. There are 1,700 derailments a year. First of all, that is absolutely insane. 1,700. Right. So that, I agree. Like, that, what?
It's like 5 or 6 a day.
We need to get on this, right?
Right.
My pushback was, they may not be happening more frequently. We don't know. That could just be recency bias, because we're reporting on them more. They're not happening at a higher rate. We're just reporting on them at a higher rate. And you know the news, they'll get tired of train derailments and they'll go on to something else.
Find the next shiny red ball.
So the risk is we're going to forget about them and nothing will get done. And then the other risk is we're going to overreact to these and not fix the things that actually need to be fixed. We're going to end up with policies and rules and regulations for public to save face publicly that don't actually fix what we're causing, the root causes of some of these incidents. So I think we can both agree that the press is a much needed public service that we have in this country, but we also recognize that, and more recently, it can be used by bad actors to drive a narrative to an end they're trying to affect, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree.
Well, I guess the rest of us safety pros, we're just going to have to keep our heads down, work from the inside where we know what's going on, and just stay out of the fray, right?
Like you said, if you're outside, just shut up.
I know. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, that's a bold statement from somebody who doesn't know. Anyway, all right, man. What do you got planned next? Anything exciting coming up?
We'll be doing some traveling. I'm home for a little bit, but we'll be doing some traveling. Got some confined space rescue training coming up, and got some mobile equipment training coming up, and staying a little busy.
All right, man. Let's pick an episode out of something like that, and we'll talk about it. Share it with everybody else. All right.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, everybody that's listening in podcast world, you can see the full video. I know it's fun to watch Drew and I actually talk and not listen, but if you want to see the full video, go to the Safety Pro Podcast community site, where you can join for free. There is no obligation to become a premium member. You can see all the videos and all the posts that are public posts. But if you want to comment and reply and create a post of your own and see some of the premium content that we do have there, you do have to become a premium member. But again, no pressure. You can still get all the podcasts out there in podcast land, and you can still see all the video podcasts on the community site without being a premium member. It's just another way to check out what's going on. And there's a link in the show notes for you to do that. And we'll talk to you on the next Safety Pro podcast.
All right. Take care.